The COVIDSafe app, our Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt, I think about 3 weeks ago, said, want to go to the footy? Download the COVIDSafe app. Yet the footy is starting up again, and I know the NRL and AFL are even talking about crowds, but not as many people are mentioning the COVIDSafe app at the moment. And if it is going to be the golden ticket for us to go back into society, what happens in planes, cinemas, theatres? They're all places we're told to switch our phones off. So surely things like that have to change. Geoffrey Huntley is a software engineer, and he's been well across the COVIDSafe app and whether it's buggy and how it's going to be improved and whether it's useful or not. And he joins me again. Welcome, Geoffrey.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you for having me this afternoon. This
problem that we've had in South Australia of a lady who tested positive for COVID-19 who was on a flight, and now they're having to do contact tracing and quarantine people who were sitting around her on a plane. It's interesting, I was thinking, in addition to the app, we're asked to turn our phones off often on planes or put them in flight mode and things like that. So they haven't really thought of that, have they?
No, even myself, I've been following this very closely for 4 weeks. And this is the first of actually someone coming across the scenario of, like, there are places where it's not socially appropriate to have your phone on. And there are places where, like, it's actually recommended to turn your phone off in the case of airplanes. And it really calls to the effectiveness that this isn't sunscreen. It's not going to be the be-all, end-all.
Well, I mean, you're told there's messages at the cinema, turn your phone off. If you go to the theatre, turn your phone off. And these are all places we're sitting around strangers that we're not going to be able to recall that we're near, and we can be sitting next to someone in a cinema for 2 hours, Geoffrey.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly right.
So anyway, that's just a social aspect on it. Let me get to... Actually, Helga has a question that I was going to ask. I'm going to bring in now. And if you have any questions about the COVIDSafe app, 1300 222 891. Hi, Helga.
Hi, Jules. My question is, I read on the German magazine The Stern yesterday that they had an article about our COVIDSafe app in Australia. And they said it does not work on the iPhone because iOS doesn't allow it to operate while it is sitting in the background. And that makes it pretty much obsolete then.
Let me put that to Geoffrey Huntley, because I know you've been studying this, Geoffrey. I've read this too, that it doesn't work in the background. Have Apple or the federal government solved this problem?
Yeah, this thing's been really fascinating. So it has been resolved, but it's been really mum's the word about it, because in the Senate, it was actually said that this was an Apple problem. But we actually had research with the agency saying this was a human error due to a software development bug before that Senate meeting. If you want to learn more about it, head to covidsafe.watch. It's a website. There's a section there for Senate submissions. I just submitted that as a Senate submission about 30 minutes ago. But yeah, it's now been fixed as well as it can be without migrating to the new Apple and Google functionality, which was released last week.
John has called. Hi, John.
Oh, hi, Jules.
You have a question?
Yeah, as long as I can recall, iPhones and Android phones have never been able to communicate with Bluetooth. I can't send my daughter a file via Bluetooth or vice versa. I've recently read online that Apple and Google are both trying to get into the COVID-19 app code so that they can improve it. And one of the improvements that they suggested was to let Androids and iPhones communicate with each other via Bluetooth. So my question is, does it work at the moment?
Geoffrey?
Yeah, so I can explain that. So Google and Apple have banded together to come up with a solution. And that solution involves actually moving the functionality for contact tracing actually into the operating system of the phone. And when they do that, it's going to be much more effective than it running as an app. Now, you're still going to need an application on the phone to be able to use this operating system functionality, but it has big implications for how COVIDSafe is going to go forward, because Google and Apple prohibit using side-by-side the old functionality and this new functionality that they've released last week. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the government can actually migrate to this new functionality. So yes, does work, and it actually works much more effectively, but it has implications, like technologically, how it's going to work, and like do we need to throw out what's been built already? And also has implications from a law and legislation point of view because it works what's called exposure notification. It's a digitalised system.
So does that mean,
system.
With the Google and Apple system, Geoffrey, does that mean that if I've been around someone with COVID-19, that I'm alerted on my phone by Google and Apple, and therefore it's up to me to contact the government? Because obviously with the COVIDSafe app, the message is coming from the Australian government, so they're aware of who's a close contact. But with the Google and Apple system, does that rely on me to inform the government?
Yeah, so it flips itself, the way the model actually flips itself around. It does a broadcast that you've been exposed to someone who has COVID-19, and then the onus is on you to then go down to a health agency. It removes a lot of the ability for centralised data collection.
Ruth has called on 1300 222 891. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, I just wanted to point out that apps that run on Bluetooth can be used on aeroplanes. I have a medical app that I use when doing long-haul flights, and it doesn't skip a beat. So surely this is a Bluetooth app. It runs in the background, the same as my Bluetooth app for my medical condition, and it can work anywhere.
Very good point, Ruth, and I'll take that back to Geoffrey Huntley, and people are saying that you can just put your phone on silent in cinemas and things like that. I've just noticed, Geoffrey, that a lot of people just turn their phone off in those environments just to save power. You're almost going to have a message in a cinema saying, don't turn your phone off, just turn it on silent, or maybe phones will have a COVID mode, or a COVID stealth mode or something.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point, Ruth. It is true that you can have your phone in airplane mode and then turn on Bluetooth and the app will continue to function. But there are other issues if we're talking about reopening the borders, because each country is building their own contacting application and they all seem to be focusing on that particular country. And if we're talking about international travel, how is it possible for someone in the UK to have the install the Australian application? I would expect a UK application would work with the Australian application, but right now each country is kind of working in their own isolated silo. And frustratingly enough, if you are from the UK, you can't actually download the COVIDSafe application. This was raised to the government on launch, that you can't download the application if you don't have an Australian App Store account. So that means a lot of backpackers and immigrants and international travellers were unable to be able to install COVIDSafe. And all that is required is to actually just upload that application and just tick a couple extra tick boxes.
So Geoffrey, I mean, you've been monitoring the functionality of COVIDSafe, and as I said, the government has gone a little bit cold on the heavy sell that they were doing about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Do you think that it's not proving to be the goal? I mean, not saying you shouldn't download it. I mean, I've downloaded it. I want to be able to get back to normal. But do you think that it's less useful than they thought it would be?
I don't think it's the golden ticket. It's definitely something that aids additional contact traces. The idea behind it is it's meant to speed up the contact tracing. There's a lot of automation for contact traces. But one of the best things people can do is actually just be keeping a diary of what they did on each particular day, or if you're using Google and it's tracking whereabouts you've been, if you get that phone call from a contact tracer because you've been exposed, just helping them replot those days helps a lot. It's a very intensive process, and they're hoping that the application will be able to speed up that process and automate it.
John has just asked, because he said we got sidetracked, I think, about the Google and Android software for contact tracing. So can an iPhone register an Android as a contact and vice versa? Can their Bluetooth functions communicate with each other?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, they can.
Currently, as COVIDSafe it is right now, they can communicate with each other. It uses a protocol called GATT. The new version that came out in the last week, the new functionality, uses beacons, and that's much more effective.
Do you think, Geoffrey Huntley, that the government should be giving us information on how many people in our particular area have downloaded the COVIDSafe app? Because, it's all about location, location, location.
Absolutely. I've been pushing very hard and very publicly for some transparency. into the utilisation of the application. There's been a lot of messaging about how many downloads or how many people registered, but they're not industry standard metrics in the technology industry. The standard metrics is the active users. And there's been talk that they can't calculate the amount of daily active users because of privacy, but that's wrong. The application is meant to do a request every 2 hours to rotate the identifier on your phone. And using some statistics, you can just take the amount of requests per day divided by 12, and then you have how many users in Australia are using the application. Now, that would help on a global level, but there are some places where, like, we might have actually hit the 40% number. And it'll be really useful for researchers and also just the general public to have that safety and knowledge and knowing that, like, we actually have a good level of coverage with the application. So transparency is very important to build trust, and as is working on resolving privacy issues.
Geoffrey Huntley, always fascinating to chat to you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Jules.